If you've been car shopping for a Toyota in the past 4 years, you know that markups are now the norm, and you'll be lucky if you got MSRP. So come and join me as I tell you my journey of how I got $5,000 off the MSRP price on our Toyota Sienna. Stick around until the end so I can tell you the final numbers on the interest rates, the price of the car, as well as the trim and options. So the first thing that I did is I connected with a lot of salespeople. So for me, being Atlanta-based, I contacted salespeople across different cities within a 4 to 5 hour drive of Atlanta, reaching out to people in Greenville, people in Gainesville, Florida, and I was able to contact different salespeople and kind of understand what cars sell better or sit longer across state lines, in major cities, in smaller cities. And it also gave me a diversity of the type of salespeople where I felt like some of them had a larger book of business and didn't feel the rush to sell, whereas some people who may have been a cold call, maybe they were newer, felt a little bit pushier. And that's okay as long as it didn't go overboard. But that allowed me to learn more about the dealerships, the markets, and where I thought I could get a great deal. As I connected with salespeople, it also allowed me to find out different salespeople's styles. In particular, I knew I wanted everything or most things in writing, whether that was text or email, but that definitely helps as well, where you communicate how you want your correspondence to go throughout the transaction. Number 2, know your product. We were grabbing the Sienna, so I looked at all of the different trims, the different options that come with it. One of them even comes with an in-car vacuum. Knowing what trims are available and knowing how much you yourself as a consumer are willing to pay is going to be key for your negotiations. Where before you even start talking to a salesperson, you should know that you want a Sienna in the platinum trim with the entertainment center, but no all black edition, for example. When you establish that willingness to pay, you should get down to the dollar if you can, or even just a percentage where, for example, the entertainment center is $1,500. Would you pay MSRP for that? Or would you say, hey, I don't really need the entertainment center, but you're giving me a good deal. I'll pay you for half of it. I'll pay you $750 or $1,000 because I'm winning on the other options that are very important to me. Third, understand your willingness to purchase and travel. And by that I mean, I said I'm willing to travel 4 to 5 hours for the right deal, but also when I would be willing to do that. Would I be willing to take the day off tomorrow and go pick up a car, or maybe even fly out somewhere so I could go pick up the car for the right deal? For some people, they need to say, hey, I'm not ready to buy until I'm paying this bill off 3 months from now. And understanding that is going to be important for your negotiations and conversations throughout this deal-making process. Lastly, final tip here. I know this is difficult for a lot of people, but just be human. You're working with people on the other side who are just trying to make a buck and provide for their family. And so if you try to look past their sales tactics that they are trained to employ, just be sure that you are being courteous, apologetic if you get a little bit too pushy, respond quickly, but at the same time, try to voice your needs because you are also a human as well. Okay, so coming down to how it played out, when I said connected with salespeople, I connected with people in Florida, in South Carolina, in Tennessee, and I also had some connections in Florida and Texas where I could ask them, hey, how does Toyota define MSRP, right? If I got options, are those part of the new MSRP? So using your resources to ask questions and learn more about the sales process helped equip me to do better when I was deal making. Second, I came in confident in knowing my product. We knew we wanted the Sienna and we provided 3 different colors. We were gonna do the XLE, and then on the top end, we knew we didn't need the all-wheel drive. So it was between the XLE as well as the Limited. We didn't need to go overboard and buy more car than we needed. When I negotiated with the salespeople, I provided them all of this. I said, here are my 3 colors that we're interested in. Here is the options that I'm interested in. Let me know when something comes through and we can talk about it. And when I communicated that, I also said, here's what our needs are, right? The colors were, let's call them 90% needs, right? Maybe a little bit flexible, but for the most part, those 3 are really what we're interested in, as well as that XLE part that I mentioned. But the wants for us were like the entertainment center, for example, the roof rack perhaps, because we do a little bit of camping, but those were negotiable, right? In that example, the 1500 entertainment center, I'd pay MSRP if I needed to, but I'm flexible. Third, my willingness to purchase and travel changed throughout the year. So we started looking for this car in January. We were kind of just open to it because we had an extra car. So our needs kind of changed because I got tired of driving the baby around in the coupe. We had a monthly bill that was finishing up in February. So we got more serious around March and April as far as contacting and asking salespeople what they've got available. And so timing-wise, I would say that my deals with people really started solidifying in June of this year. So just the beginning of June for 2025. Lastly, on the be human side, as I had all of these conversations, everyone had their own sales tactics and styles that they were coming at me with. And I would voice it if it felt like they were trying to be pushy or salesy. But I was also courteous about it, where I would say, hey, look, we're trying to make a deal here, but I don't know that I'm ready to buy tomorrow. So as I started having conversations with all of these people, I found out that one of the people that I was working with, who was awesome by the way, was actually in Greenville, North Carolina, which is 7 hours, versus Greenville, South Carolina, which is 2 hours away from Atlanta. But they were very helpful as far as providing different pieces of information. For example, I said, hey, look, I know we're negotiating on a Limited right now. I'd love to negotiate on an XLE price first. But because they didn't have it, I said, hey, what would you say is a ballpark price gap between the XLE and the Limited if you had both available and we were discounting each at the same time? And he told me it was about $5,000. So because of that, I was able to negotiate it with dealerships in the Limited, and I was also able to negotiate it with dealerships that had the XLE. And in my mind, knowing that about a $5,000 gap is normal, and if I beat that, then maybe I'd make the jump towards a Limited. So here we go into the nitty-gritty. As I started contacting people, I would say that my main 2 salespeople that I loved working with were located in Gainesville, Florida, and that one in Greenville, North Carolina. And so as a last-minute just check, I knew that one of the dealerships in Atlanta advertised that they only sold at MSRP. So I reached out to them and they said that they had a Sienna in the gray color that wasn't on the list. And I said, hey, look, we're really looking at the 3 colors. I don't know that I'd make the stretch for MSRP for a color that we don't want. And so as we negotiated, she had asked me about would I do $1,500 less, and of course, they said that the manager never does that. I said, I think $1,500 is still not enough. For me to do the deal, I'm going to take your sticker and I'm going to mark off the options that I want. And it ended up being about $4,400 in extra options that I didn't really want. In my mind, just as perspective, there were some options in there that I'd pay 30% of list price for or 50% of the sticker price for. But that's where I started. I sent them the sticker marked up with a $4,600 price difference or $4,400 price difference. And they luckily came back and said, hey, it's not your color, but would you do $5,000 off MSRP? So I asked my wife. I was hoping, in my mind, $2,500 MSRP maybe, now knowing what was happening while we were dancing. But my wife said she's willing to do it. I came back to the salesperson and I said, hey, would love to do this deal. When do you need me to come in? This is where it got a little bit pushy, but I understand why. This was nearing the end of the month. I believe it was the 28th. So on the weekend, we were out doing stuff. I said, we can't come in today, but how about July 4th? Because my wife was off. So they came back saying that they need to do it before the end of the month, so Tuesday the latest. I was confident that it was a great deal for me to make a snap decision and go pick up a car within 24 hours, basically. And one being human piece of this was I gave those awesome salespeople in Gainesville and Greenville a chance to beat the offer. And I said, hey, I got this deal from a local dealership. Would you match it? Because I've been working with you for so long, I'd love to give you a last look at the deal. And neither of them could beat it. Of course, some of them said that it might be a bait and switch, but it was local. So what could I lose except for 30 minutes if they were gonna do the bait and switch, right? I could just turn right back around and know that I have those awesome salespeople in other cities to rely on. With having all of those principles of connecting with the salespeople, knowing the trims, being human, as well as just being ready to purchase, we made the deal with the right person at the right time in the right city in Atlanta. I mean, I thought getting below MSRP would require me to drive or fly to different cities and states, but because of all that preparation, we were able to get the deal at MSRP. Now, we did the deal, but I think one piece of being human here is that I reached back out to those salespeople in Gainesville and Greenville, and I said, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I just did this deal. It wasn't a bait and switch, so thank you for all the information. We'll reach out to you next time if we're looking to find a car. One other tip here while I'm pulling up the final numbers, I actually created a car-specific Gmail just because when you're communicating with all of these salespeople, you get put through their sales funnel. And so you might get a lot of spam, especially for a lot of the dealerships where no one's going to respond because they know they can sell above MSRP. So creating this specific email decreases your clutter from your own personal email. And for me, I've had this since 2016, and I was able to see what dealerships that I've interacted with before might be easier to work with than others because of my track record. So you can always reuse it when the time comes to buy a different car. Final numbers here, we got the 2025 Sienna XLE, which had the base MSRP of $43,995, factory installed packages and accessories at $28.25, distributor installed packages at $32.71, and then the delivery, processing, and handling fee of $1,500. That's always charged by Southeast Toyota. Our MSRP all in was $51,591. On this sheet, I basically said I don't need the inverter, I don't need this XLE Plus package, I don't need illuminated front door sills, smart LED ambient lighting, all-weather floor mats. I didn't need any of that stuff. Paint protection film, which I think is on the cars anyway, and ToyoGuard Platinum. Because of the $5,000 discount, our price before tax, tag, and title was $46,591. And then as far as financing, we came in with our Chase Bank's interest rate at 6%, 5.99 or whatever, but they said for them to be able to give the incentives, we needed to finance with Toyota Southeast. And so Toyota Southeast with our credit score 780 plus, we picked through a range of like 4 or 5 or 6 years, and we settled on the 6-year loan at 7.59%. And really that's what the range was. It was anywhere from like 7.5 to 8%. But our plan is to just refinance almost immediately and get the 6% because I think it'll be worth it. There you have it. We just did a few things. We talked to as many salespeople as possible. We knew our product, what we were willing to pay, figured out how ready we were to buy and how willing we were to travel. And of course, the most important piece is we just acted like humans around these salespeople, and we were able to get that deal done with $5,000 off MSRP on a Toyota Sienna in Atlanta in 2025. I don't plan on disclosing the salesperson's name publicly, but I think if anyone is interested, feel free to message me. I'll ask her if she's willing to get forwarded your contacts, just because I don't want her to feel like she has to give everyone the same deal because it's through me. I know that that was a great deal and probably quite rare for them to do. So I'm happy to forward it if you're really interested, but I definitely want her approval as well. With that, thanks for watching and happy shopping.